Working? All right. I think we're going to get started. We may have some stragglers join us. Everyone can hear me okay? Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. This is fantastic, and we are excited to be partnering with some volunteers and interested members of the community like yourself and our friends from the Homeless Coalition. My name is Karen Carroll. I am the director of the Health and Human Services Department here in Somerville. I'm here with my deputy director, Kelly Hyland, who put this together. We have Justin Cates over here, our emergency manager for the city, and Chief Breen, our fire chief for the city. So there's a lot of concerned folks here in the city that are trying to find ways to ensure the safety of some of our most vulnerable residents. And it's not easy. We're, and we're a relatively new team, some of us, and Chief Breen's been here a long time, so we get some guidance from him. But we appreciate your interest and support in this issue, and we hope you'll learn some things today and ask us some questions and maybe decide you want to be involved with us in the future. So thank you again. I'd like to introduce Mike Libby and Hannah O'Halloran from the Somerville Homeless Coalition, and they're going to be our main speakers when we're ready, but are you going next? Or okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. There are snacks here and water. Help yourself. And thank you again for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. So just a brief overview of why we're here, kind of why we put this call out through MRC. During the planning process with our city staff and at SHC, we're looking at opening a warming center for our unhoused population, and really kind of looking at what we need for capacity for those warming centers was staffing. SHC has limited staffing and they're stretched thin, so I suggested the MRC to kind of help as trained professionals to respond to those requests as they come in. The other reason that I called for MRC as well is to other activities that we have. So we have, I'll touch base on some of those, but helping with other activities within SHC, and then also within our Health and Human Services. So our prevention manager has some job action sheets that I have out here for you that I'll go over as well. And then also this training is to really humanize the population that are our neighbors. So how can we engage with them in a thoughtful, kind way, and then how can we be champions for others in the community to do so as well? So that's kind of the background of this training and why we're here. So thank you all. And Hannah? Or no, Mike, I'm sorry. Oh, I also, sorry, this next slide, I almost forgot. Karen had found in the Boston Globe yesterday, there was an insert about Tracy Kidder, the author, has done a book with Jim O'Connell, who's the co-founder of the Boston Center Homeless, what is it? The Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program. And a real trailblazer in that field. And so I kind of pulled this quote out, which I thought was kind of more thought-provoking for us and a good starting point for Mike and his group to discuss. So this is from Tracy Kidder. During that Q&A, I was struck by a world that was sitting there in plain sight, but that we choose not to see. And I'll let you take this spot.
Thank you, Kelly. Again, my name is Mike Libby. I'm the Executive Director of the Somerville Homeless Coalition. I'm really excited that we have so many people in attendance today. When we started to get together with the city to talk about the possibility of doing a warming center, my biggest fear was, are we going to have enough people, staff, to be able to make this happen? And I had never even heard of the MRC Medical Reserve Corps, so it was amazing that that resource exists, and then the fact that so many of you have come here today to hear more about our next venture is really inspiring for us, and it brings it to life that there actually are people out there that care and that are really interested in helping make this a reality for us. Before I turn it over to Hannah, who's our emergency services manager, who's going to talk more directly about the warming center, I'll just give you a brief overview of the Somerville Homeless Coalition. We've been around since 1985, where we started the first individual shelter in Somerville. It still exists. It started out with 6 beds. It has expanded to 16. And we would like to expand it more, but we've just run out of space. We're in the basement of a church just outside Davis Square. It's an old bowling alley that was converted into a shelter. It was never intended to be a shelter. It was never intended to be here almost 40 years later, but it is. And we just don't have enough space there to take in more people. So we're at capacity 365 days a year. And that's why we're talking about doing a warming center, because we can't add any more beds where we're at. So under our umbrella of emergency programs, the adult shelter, individual shelter is one of our main programs. Our other program under that umbrella is our street outreach program, where Hannah and her team go out and do all of their work outside in the city. Main places, Davis Square, outside 7-Eleven, by the T stop is a big one, Seven Hills Park behind Harvard Vanguard, working our way to Union Square, now with the T having expanded, which is a great thing, but what's going to happen is more unhoused people probably will start popping up in that area, so our activity will increase there. We go to Foss Park over by McGrath and Broadway, Chucky Harris Park over further towards Sullivan Square, and one of our big places that you won't typically see is under Route 93 by the salt piles, where DPW, I think it's probably the state DPW, have the salt for the roads. Is a big unhoused population there, and then there are different pockets throughout the city. But Hannah and her team are out there every day trying to engage with people and learn more about them, develop a relationship, and hopefully be able to get them into shelter. And our ultimate goal, which we've been very successful with, is to get them into some kind of permanent housing along the way. We also have an emergency food pantry. It's better known as Project Soup, which is located in East Somerville. We serve about 900 families a month. That is triple what we did in COVID. Just to give you a sense of the amount of activity that we've seen increase over Project Soup, in 2019 we distributed just about 20,000 bags of food. In 2022 we distributed 70,000 bags of food. A lot of that obviously was COVID, but then compounded with inflation and just all the other economic factors. We have not seen a COVID dip, which we thought we would. Inflation started to come in, and we keep going up. And then the final program that we have under our emergency services umbrella is kind of a piece of the outreach team that Hannah manages, which we just opened in collaboration with the city mid-November, so we're only 2 months in. It's an engagement center, otherwise kind of known as a drop-in center. Throughout this area, there really are no places where our unhoused folks and homeless people living in shelters can go during the day to receive services. There are some clubhouses which are for the Department of Mental Health operate, but you have to fit into certain categories. So we've been working for several years and trying to make this a reality, and it is becoming a reality. Still trying to roll it out. It's going to be slow, but we're really excited about it. But we're going to finally have some place to invite our outreach folks to come inside and meet with us. I think our outreach team is happy about that because they're out there 365 days a year. And it's much more conducive to getting stuff done. So that kind of rounds out our emergency programs. We also have a supportive housing program. We rent about 60 different apartments throughout the city. We rent from the private market, take our unhoused or those people who are in shelters that have a disability, and put them in our housing, and we provide the support. So each person has a case manager assigned to them to help with the tenancy stabilization in the long term. We've had some people that have been there that just came in last week. We've had some that have been there almost 20 years. It's been a very successful program. We also have a housing search program where basically that's what it is. It's just putting in all of the applications and all the documents and trying to see what different people qualify for in terms of housing in an effort to eventually get them into housing. We also have a homeless prevention program, which became very popular during COVID, helping people with their rent arrears and their utility arrears. Pre-COVID, we may have had 20 people on the wait list. At the height of COVID, we had 402 applications. It's come down a little bit, but it's still very, very, very active. What else am I missing? Did I cover? I cover all of those. So now, we're talking about opening this warming center. I'm going to turn it over to Hannah, who will give you much more detail about what that means.
I think we're going to start with a video that kind of lets you actually see some of the work that we do. But if you're going to take one thing away, I hope it's that, I do the majority of the work.
Transforming lives since 1985 by providing resources, services, support, and housing. Just last year, we served 7,000 people. We are the ultimate safety net in the community. If it weren't for us, they would have nowhere to go.
We do reach so many people, and it's not just here in the shelter, it's the outreach clients, and it's the housing coordinators, and the coordinated entry program, and rapid rehousing. There's so many people, and it's not just here in Somerville, it's all over.
I never thought I'd be homeless, I never thought I'd be in the position that I was in. And it could happen to anybody.
Bruce is a special case. He was someone that I met on the streets probably 3 years ago in the throes of addiction, not doing great. And I learned, first starting in this field, that, you have to meet people where they're at.
There's so many people that are homeless for different reasons. What we need to get ourselves to, what I needed was to stay sober.
When I would see Bruce, he would say, Hannah, I want to go to the shelter. I want to go to the shelter. And I would look at him and be like, sorry, Bruce, but you're drinking. I can't have you up there.
And I asked her again, please, Hannah, I promise you, I'll stay sober.
I said, if you can come on Monday and have a negative drug screen, then I'll let you in the shelter. And he put his hand out. He said, that's a deal. We shook hands. He came that Monday, had a negative drug screen, and he's been here ever since.
The human touch is what we do. That's what makes us successful. That's why people come to us. They won't go to traditional systems of care. They're scared of the system. Trust is everything. We take the time to really understand the whole person, not just focusing on their basic need in the moment.
A lot of people have mental health problems and substance use. It's a mutual journey. We walk alongside them at whatever pace that they set.
He really got super motivated, and we would call places together because he would tell me how he has a gift of the gab. So he could get them on the phone, he would be able to talk his way into an apartment, and he did. He found the place that he's moving into.
When we give the keys to someone that's on the streets or in the shelter, and they finally have a place to call home, we accompany them there. We help them transition to that new environment. It can be very scary. We're here for the long haul. And that's different. That's what distinguishes us.
Now if I look at him, it's wild. He's about to get housed, he's sober, he's got his kid back. We used to sit on the streets all the time, he'd cry and be like, I just want to be with my son. And now he gets to see his son. It's pretty magical.
It's way more than that, what they've given to me. Just spiritually, they brought me back. They brought me back to life.
Homelessness is a big problem. Everyone sees it, everyone knows that it exists, but it's not something that we can end on our own. We're a small organization, and the work that we do is astronomical.
Our mission is challenging. You are the difference. You, the community, our neighbors, our supporters, our volunteers, are the difference between someone living outside, living in a shelter, not having enough food on the table, being at risk of falling into homelessness and losing their home. But we are making progress, and we will never give up.
I want to thank all the staff at Somerville Homeless Coalition, getting me off the street, helping me and my family, and helping me on this new start to the rest of my life.
Perfect, thanks. So, like Mike said, I'm Hannah. I'm the Somerville Homeless Coalition's Emergency Services Program Manager. Basically, the way I typically word it is I deal with anybody that's still experiencing homelessness, are the programs that I oversee. So I oversee our shelter, our street outreach program, our brand new engagement center that is up and coming, and now hopefully this warming center that we'll be able to hopefully utilize this winter to get people inside. Like Mike mentioned, we already have our shelter, 16 beds. It's not a lot, and it's full consistently. Even though it's full, right, there's still some people that sleep outside that don't want to come inside. We call them the rough sleepers. The people that don't mind being outside when it's 30 degrees, when it's raining, when it's snowing. But everybody does have that breaking point, right? The point where it is too cold, it is too much snow, and they decide, okay, I need to come inside. And that's when we need, as service providers and the city, to provide them a safe place to actually come inside. So these pictures right here kind of show some of the really severe sleeping conditions that I've seen. The two on the ends are from what Mike referred to that we call the salt piles. So it's in East Somerville. It's literally probably 30 feet high of road salt with 93 highway about 4 feet above you. And we typically see anywhere between 15 and 20 people sleeping out there. Because it's all the way on the other side of East Somerville, there really isn't any shelter near there. So 9 out of 10 times those people don't come inside. The one in the middle is actually from an encampment in Alewife. That year, actually, that tent, I had to shovel out a couple winters ago. The snow had completely collapsed and the person was trapped inside by the time we had gotten out to them on our outreach. Still to this day, I saw him the other day, he was like, oh, it's my favorite shoveler. I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you know, when you shoveled me out of the snowstorm. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, okay. But these images just kind of give you an idea of the people that we're targeting when we're talking about opening this warming center, the people that really don't often come inside, but they still need a warm place to sleep at night. Is Kelly? So, what is our goal with this? It's not to be a shelter, right? Our goal is to offer a space, ideally at nighttime, where people can come and be warm. Simple as that. We're not looking to do case management with people during those hours. We're not going to end their homelessness in those hours. This really is an emergency response, a triage, a very basic operation where we are getting people inside and keeping them safe and warm in really extreme conditions. okay? The reason I say that is because it's not going to be open all winter, right? It's going to be open, again, during extreme conditions. And that's what our daytime services are for. A lot of these people we already engage with. Our outreach team goes and sees. They come to our drop-in center. That's when we'll be getting that work done. So don't think to yourself like, oh, I signed up to make, tend somebody's homelessness. No, we're still getting that done. The purpose of this is to provide a safe place, keep them alive, right, through these extreme conditions. What do we envision? Picture a room like this with less artwork and less desks, right? But essentially this, a large open space with either, we're still deciding, news to come, either cots or yoga mats spread out, chairs. If we go with yoga mats, some people would rather sit in a chair than be on the ground on a yoga mat. Spread out with people sleeping in them. Maybe people awake in them. That's fine. Providing people food. Most likely the space won't have a kitchen, so we're not going to be cooking. Ideally ordering pizza, handing out sandwiches, simple things like that make less of a mess, much easier to distribute. Again, basic operation. Access to bathrooms, which most people don't have outside, so even that is a luxury. And then SHC will be providing, hopefully, most of the staffing along with support from volunteers. Because we have to run our typical programming, we can't necessarily be up all night long and then run our daytime program. So that's where kind of the volunteering comes in. But the kind of staffing of the operation will be volunteers, SHC staff, monitoring the room, keeping an eye on things, making sure people aren't going into the mayor's office if this is where we were, right? Making sure people are using the bathrooms appropriately. Making sure if someone, is having difficulty being in such a large room with so many people, taking them aside and having a simple conversation with them. Symptom management is what we're looking for. And what challenges might we face, right? It's kind of twofold, is what Mike and I often talk about. One is the extremes, which actually might be easier to manage, crazy enough. Medical emergencies, overdoses. We have a lot of IV drug users that live outside. So managing a potential overdose, whether it's in the main room, the bathroom, a side room, if they get out of our view. Coming out of extreme cold, there can be hypothermia. Treating that, triaging it. Wound care, we do very often. When people finally get to come inside after being outside in a snowstorm for 6 to 8 hours and they have an abscess, what does that look like? How can we help them? Psychiatric emergencies. Again, taking someone that's used to sleeping outside to a room with even 5 people can be extremely difficult. Now we might be in a room with 20 people. We might be in a room with someone that took their phone yesterday. How does that look? How does balancing emotions in that room look? So that kind of extreme. I say that that's easier because you can have like a protocol in place and everyone knows what to do. It happens right in front of you. The other extreme is the ability to say no, right? As staff and volunteers, we often have to look at the larger picture. And again, we're working with a very vulnerable population here. So what happens when it's 5 degrees outside and you did just catch someone shooting up in the bathroom? Do they get to stay? Do you have to ask them to leave? How does that play on your emotions as a volunteer? That gets more, to me personally, that gets more complicated than dealing with an overdose. 2 people get in an argument. You have to call the police to have them removed. A lot of people, it can be controversial to call the police when dealing with the homeless population. They might have warrants. They might have bad experiences with the police, right? So that's kind of the other extreme. They've slept there all night long. It's 7 a.m. It's still only 30 degrees outside. But that space has to go back to being a space, right? It's not made for being a shelter. And thinking about how are you going to ask those people to leave again. So those are kind of the, just putting out there to think about the challenges that do arise in these sorts of situations. It's not to say that it's something that's going to happen every night that it's open. And it's not to say that there aren't going to be many positives, right? We've done in the past where we've brought people in to hotels during the winter, and it's been the first time that I've seen them come out actually like clean, refreshed, sleeping after being outside for a year. So there will be lots of positives with this experience, but just there can be some challenges that come with that experience. As I'm going through this, I've realized I didn't leave myself on a high note. I don't think there was something after this that we planned, do we? It just says additional activities. Did I cover everything, Mike? Or do you have more? A high note? We're gonna help people. We're gonna keep them alive.
If it's not
right?
obvious.
Yeah, that's the high note.
You know, I think, you know, doing this work, Hannah and I are always cognizant of when volunteers get involved, that we just want it to be realistic. The helping profession, and you seem like most of you are in it, it's hard, it's not easy. That doesn't mean it's not positive and you can't do great things. We just like to make sure that everybody comes in eyes wide open, that it can be difficult. It can be unbelievably rewarding as well. We have a ton of successes, and the way we're looking at the warming center is, as much as we would like to keep it open, you know, every night throughout the year, it's our opportunity to offer at least these really, really extreme nights the chance for people to, you know, in the most difficult situations, stay alive. And that's how we're looking at it. And you are, you know, as volunteers, critical to making this even become a reality. We cannot do it on our own. We just don't have the resources, the staffing resources, because we already are operating all these programs to be able to do that. So that's why we're so excited about people's interest in doing this.
I think we were going to ask if people had questions.
Yeah, I think that would be a great time.
So in terms of determining when something like this would be open is still a conversation that's being had amongst the team, and that's one thing that we talk often about is the not divide, but whose responsibility is what. A lot of that would fall onto the city. In terms of disseminating the information, that's when our street outreach team kind of takes control. We do it often before big storms, before frigid weather. We'll go out. We've actually worked extra hours to make sure that people find somewhere safe, and we're not the only organization that does that. There's other street outreach teams in the area, different shelters, different things like that, that would notify the unsheltered population. We know where the encampments are. we typically know where people are sleeping, so we can notify them that, hey, this opportunity is coming up. In terms of kind of preventing someone from accessing something like this, I think everything always comes down to safety. Right now, this is something that's new. It's almost like a clean slate, unless maybe there's some like really harsh circumstance that SHC has had with somebody, like where a person's really threatened a staff member's safety. But other than that, it's all determined kind of case by case individually, and it comes down to safety, making sure that 1, volunteers are safe, 2, staff are safe, 3, the whole community is safe.
And then you want me to follow up?
Yes, please.
So, on the trigger points for these types of events, one of the things that we're looking at is having clear criteria as to when you would activate the center. Many other jurisdictions around the country use typically 32 degrees as sort of the starting point. It's also dependent on the geography of that jurisdiction. So as you get further north, people are a little more resilient. And so you see people have more concerns as we get further south. Now you're looking at 32 degrees is probably the best. But for northern climates, normally it's less than that, where we see extreme temperatures that are really impacting this population. The challenge I think we're running into right now, so say we pick 32 degrees as our trigger point for this, it massively increases the number of nights that we would have this open. And we're struggling right now just to find a venue that would be open all of these times. And then we have the staff necessary to be able to bring that in. So we have to balance that sort of that difficulty of trying to have a space that we can open for every single night at 32 degrees, or decide on a lower trigger point that does really impact people the most. So that's just a little more background on that.
Yeah, and I'll just add too, this is hopefully a pilot, year 1, when we get this up and running is kind of first attempt at figuring this out, and we hope it can expand. We can expand our capacity in the future to be open more in the winter. So we have similar issues around heat in the summer, and it's a little bit different, but just thinking about emergency shelter in general. So we're really starting at that very basic, really extreme weather conditions. And also adding that we're looking at the daytime and the overnight. We kind of talked about overnight. But again, we hope to be able to do both of those things, because our current overnight shelters, for those who have a spot, they need to vacate it in the morning. Those are not open all day. So there's kind of a few different things we're looking at here. And they may happen in phases as we can. But I just wanted to highlight that as well.
Yes.
Touched on it, but extreme weather also keeps, so that's hard.
Yes.
What's your sense of what the staff needs would be? One person a day, 2 people a day, what variable depending on?
So, as Justin mentioned, we've been kind of doing little field trips to all these different churches, faith-based groups, city buildings, pseudo-city buildings, trying to identify, an appropriate place and appropriate places, because a lot of these places, such as if you're talking churches on the weekends, they're going to be much more busy. So if there's like a big snowstorm on a Saturday night, we have to look at the availability of, what the church is doing, what's booked already. And then these other venues we've been looking at also have other events and meetings and whatnot. So we're putting together now kind of a spreadsheet of what hours are available, so on and so forth. So that will determine how many people we could accommodate. There's one venue that is much bigger than the others, so that would determine right now. We're still kind of working through, depending upon which venue, how many people we can accommodate, and then how many people, how many volunteers do we think we might need. It's interesting because, you know, we run an overnight shelter 365 days a year, but this just seems a little bit different because there's no continuity of the population. And, you know, when our guests come into our shelter, they have their space, they know where the kitchen is, they know where their food is, they're very self-sufficient. So they kind of just do their own thing, and it just runs itself, you know, to one extent or another. For this venture, it's going to be, you know, different in that way, that, and a lot of these people who are outside choose to be outside for a whole host of reasons, a lot of which is they don't do well being around other people or noises or other stimuli. So we're going to, it's a long way to answer your question, we're still figuring it out. And a lot of it will, you know, we'll find our minimum threshold, but we'll ask for as many people who, you know, as we can, because one person that's having a difficult night can consume a lot of time and energy that would, you know, take away from the rest of the community. So we're very cognizant of trying to do that. Great question.
One question I had was, you talked about like having volunteers and staff in this warming center. Like, what types of like de-escalation trainings would be available to people, like in some of the situations that you were talking about as far as challenges, and also like, this is maybe a separate question, but if there's any like supports you would need, or like from the community, I guess, at large, or different ways that community can support.
Yeah, so I think heading into this project, say, if I'm understanding the way MRC works correctly, we would have people kind of sign up to be interested in this project. And if that's the case, SHC would put together kind of, along with the city, specific trainings, such as like a de-escalation training, maybe a motivational interviewing training, different things like that that are kind of things that we use on a daily basis, and kind of host those before going into a warming center night. We would also hope to get whoever is interested in volunteering to the actual site. Mike calls it like a dress rehearsal, like walk around, this is the bathroom, you know, that's the other, and really do some training before it all happens.
Just in time training, if MRC folks know the terminology. Yeah.
There we go. So there would be some beforehand.
So his other question was around what other supports. I think some of the things that we could see maybe is, you know, food, stuff like that, donations regarding that kind of stuff. I think would probably be things that would be helpful at the site. I don't know if we're still going to figure out, you know, kind of the supplies for the site, you know, things like the yoga mats and that. So there might be opportunities there as well, but we're still trying to flesh that out.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question. So how many folks in the room are from Somerville or live in Somerville? Is there quite a few? So one of the things that I mentioned, you know, we're still trying to really lock down some venues that we might be able to use for this. And community members typically have the best entryway into local faith-based institutions and other organizations. So if you have a location that you're like, oh, this would be perfect for this, feel free to reach out to us. We can sort of triage it and figure out if it's something that might be a good option for this. Because as we discussed a couple of times, the big challenge that we have is all these locations are typically booked for other events and activities. So we may be trying on a certain day to say, okay, well, we've got 5 options available, 4 of them are booked for something else. What can we do? So if you have ideas or thoughts or connections out there in the community, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to engage with you.
I have a question. Has anyone ever, you know, worked in a warming center or a similar program or done anything like that? Does anybody want to talk about, not to put anybody on the spot, their experience and what their role was, and, you know, and
Specifically, but a nurse worked in the emergency room quite a bit, so I see that option a lot.
thank you. Anybody else? And that could be a similar experience for us as well. We have no idea, if, when we open up the warming center, how many people will come in, because we've never done it. So hopefully people will take us up on the opportunity, but a lot of this is an experiment for us as well.
Probably a lot of that trust building, too, goes along with that.
Yes.
So, it's kind of hosted by you, but there's the backbone of the government, and so kind of letting them know that it's a safe space, too, could increase those numbers as we go. One of the kind of additional activities, I can get through this, that might go along kind of that question that you had about what else can we do to help as well, is just within the HHS structure, is that we have our prevention services team that is run by Matt Mitchell. And so he came up with a couple of different job action sheets that I have up here if you wanted to review them, with sign-up sheets. And so he does a lot of outreach events for a grant that he has for Narcan distribution. So that is really kind of manning a table, say at the library for a couple-hour shift, and interacting with the public and educating them on overdose prevention and Narcan. There's Narcan that they can take. There's just a few forms to fill out for grant purposes. And then the other one is backpack distribution. So with some grant funds, he was able to purchase backpacks that they fill with all sorts of materials, sleeping bags, hand warmers, toothbrush, toothpaste, what else?
Hats and gloves.
Hats and gloves, like everything that could be helpful for someone that might be unhoused. So someone that can just come over to the annex and help assemble some of those backpacks, and then they get distributed to our community partners, as well as our fire department. Matt will be doing trainings with all of the fire department staff, and so when they're out at calls and things, they can leave some backpacks for those folks, and also with our police department as well. So those are two kind of non-staffing ways that you can help if you're not able to staff a warming center. And I'm sure you have a slew of opportunities. But that's really it. If there's any other questions, we'll be around. So feel free to come up. And if there's a sign-up sheet that's sitting on a chair back there, if folks don't mind signing in and providing your contact info, and maybe if you do feel like you could volunteer in that staffing role, just letting us know. Yes?
What about venues for people who need to park?
Yeah, yeah, I know. And that's a challenge when we're looking at spaces too, is if we're going to recruit volunteers and staff, how, making sure they're safe and where can they park and get to the venue appropriately.
We could probably figure out some sort of solution for like a parking pass for volunteers. That's something I'm sure we could probably figure out for our parking department. That's sort of the solving problem.
Yeah.
Trying to find spots for
Yeah.
that.
Well, parking a meter and they have parking consideration.
Yeah, maybe that's our solution is for volunteers. We have like we call it like field turn rights or something.
Yeah.
After the end of the way, for a volunteer, we want them.
They know that.
Exactly. So we can figure out a solution for that.
Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah, good. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. And I just want to say our friend Nikki Spencer just joined in. Nikki is the chief administrative, chief assistant to the mayor, chief of staff to the mayor. Sorry, Nikki. She's all of those things. So we thank Nikki and the mayor for their support to this initiative as well. And we appreciate everyone coming today and giving your time. And like we said, sign up. There's 2 sign-ups here for those activities, the other activities, and then the sign up in the back if you're interested in joining us and doing some additional training and maybe staffing that. Thanks again, and feel free to chat with us if you have questions or concerns. And we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Right.